Welcome back to Safas Unscripted, episode 13. People, thank you very much for your love and support. We got Casual Bars Rugby, we got Brett Burns, and we got Bria van Herbst. People, we finally hit 200 subs. It's been growing
Oh,
insane.
wow.
Thank you very much. Absolutely brilliant. But news, we got some news. It's juicy news. It's not news, but it's a tweet, and we take it as news, okay? Because it's a topic, and we're going to speak about it. So a former Wallaby has come out and said, listen, he wouldn't mind seeing Jake White as the new Wallaby coach. Now, of course, they had the traitor, the man that I love, the international rugby guru genius, national treasure, Eddie Jones. What do we think about the likes of a Jake White going to coach the Wallabies? Obviously, he's got a lot of history with South Africa. So let's hear the boys' opinions.
I don't think that it's okay. Because I do like that we're calling it news, but I think that this tweet on X is opening up a little bit of a can of worms. Because if anybody wasn't listening, they are definitely listening now. And we all know, I've said this in a previous clip, that Jake White wants to play international rugby. And the fact that now that is wanted by Australians, this could get juicy. I don't know. Let the bull guy take over and see what he thinks.
Yeah, so if it was 2022 or beginning 2023, I probably would have said go for it. But Jake's kind of changed my thought pattern about him. He's innovated the Bulls in a way that I really enjoy recently, and I think he's got us playing a lot better rugby. Obviously, introducing talents like Ulrich Lowe, Ron Nokia, obviously Cameron Hanekom. So I would be very, very sad to see Jake White go. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, the thing is, of course, we can there's a comment. I don't know if Brett saw it, but there was a comment on one of our pages that said, "Listen, me and Brett should stop talking bad about the Bulls because they're playing so well." And if this was probably a year ago, I would say no. Keep Jake there. That's guaranteed victories for the Stormers over the Bulls. But let's not beat around the bush. He's been doing very, very well for the Bulls this season so far. Of course, season is still a long time to go. But he's changed a bit of the game, and the Bulls look very exciting. If whether that's the players or his coaching strategy, I think we might see Bria van Cry on camera again as soon as Jake leaves. I can't believe I'm saying this.
I can't wait for that day to happen. But if you have to think about it, Jake White has been good everywhere he's gone, and the Oak's been criticized a lot. Remember 2004? People hated him, couldn't understand how the Oak is the Springbok coach, and then they go on to win the World Cup in 2007 because of his almost as good as Rassie mind games. It would be sad to see the man go, because I think that although Australia's rugby is in a bit of shambles right now, because not a lot of people want to play rugby anymore, I think Jake, if he gets appointed as like he is at the Bulls with a director of rugby / head coach role, I think he could turn things around. And that's not good for South African rugby, because it just takes one loss against the Wallabies to make Breven cry. So I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the new thing. You watch me cry on camera, you sorted for life. But yeah, it's I don't know. That's a question I want to raise to you guys. Do you think that Jake White, let's say he makes the move to the Wallabies, do you think he's the guy that changes the whole thing for them? Do you think that he gets them competing for World Cups again? Do you see him being that guy?
Well, the thing is, I know it's early days and it's just speculation, of course, but I think Jake could do what the Wallabies people or the Australian people thought Eddie Jones would do. Like, you bring in a big name, you bring some rugby heritage back into the country, make people want to play. Now, of course, that didn't happen with Eddie Jones, and he decided to go to Japan again. But I think Jake White is a big enough name to get some decent pool to get the guys. And the one thing that Jake needs is backing. And I think as soon as, and he'll make that clear, if he goes into that Wallabies role, he's saying, listen, I want backing. I want the boys that are not playing in this country. I want access to that rugby league guys. And I want to, and that's what it's gonna take to bring success to this nation again. Now, the question for me really is, does he want to go? Because we know how proudly South African Jake is, and he's spoken about it many times that he will coach the Boks again if he gets the chance. He's been coaching the Bulls for so long. Brett, do you see him actually taking on that job? If you look at his morals and his ethics when it comes to being proudly South African?
I think 5 years ago, I would have said, yes, he'd go in a heartbeat, because he's never kept it a secret that he prefers to be an international coach. I think 5 years ago, he would rather take up the head coach role for Fiji than he would as the head coach for the Bulls. Because he's never kept it a secret. He wants to coach international teams. He wants to coach at the World Cup and stuff like that. So, but now it almost seems like, because he's director of rugby and head coach of the Bulls, and he's backed by the two richest people in South Africa financially, I think that he has more. It's almost like it's stress-free. No, don't quote me on this. It appears to be less stress, let's say that, rather than stress-free at the Bulls, because he's got the financial backing, he's got the support from the higher-ups. And I think in Australia, it's a bit of a nanny state. And that's not a dig at Australia. That's just what we're picking up, that they don't have the full control. Coaches don't get to dictate who gets to play or not. I think that's where Eddie Jones got tumbled out of favoritism at Australia. And I think he couldn't pick who he wanted to. That's my opinion. So I don't know. I think Jake's happy at the Bulls.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope he is. But I think it's even a problem, like with the whole Australian rugby setup. I just think that there's no backing in that organization. I think rugby league or Aussie rules is the place to be in Australia at the moment. I think that's where people make their money. That's where people enjoy what they do. And I see Australian rugby as such a toxic environment at the moment. I mean, Eddie Jones, yes, he's had his very arrogant moments, but when he was in the Wallabies setup, he's obviously now probably going to be announced as Japan coach, and I think he'll do very well there. But when he was at the Wallaby setup, it's almost like he was, you can't tell me like anything. I'm Eddie Jones, like I'm this, and it was almost like over the top for me. Like those ads, very unusual, very very unusual. So I just think Australian rugby is very toxic at the moment.
Yeah. The thing is, like, they make it toxic for themselves, and then you pick a coach that doesn't mind having a bust up in the dressing room. I mean, that it must have been like one of the most awkward things for Michael Hooper and Quade Cooper, especially Michael Hooper, that had to sit there and be a pundit and try and keep it professional during the World Cup, watching his team suffer. He was the captain, he got dropped, and he would have been a massive, massive asset to that team. Brett, your thoughts on that?
I'm thinking back now, but a few years ago, where I thought where Australia really, really fell out of the bus was when, I forget her name. She's a higher up in Australian rugby with the black hair that made sure that Israel Folau got fired. And I think that's where Australian rugby went south, was when they took a political act or an opinion, if you will, and turned it into a hate crime or a crime as such. So I think that's where Australia went out of favor, because people left because that their friend got banned for saying something on social media. And they decided, I also don't want to play for Australia. If you're going to kick my friend out, Why would I support this organization? And again, don't. It's not a fact. It's what I think. But imagine you're an Australian rugby player. You have all the passion in the world, but you also have your own religious beliefs, and you cannot say anything because you're scared to lose your job as a rugby player for your country, and you are making a difference to that team in a positive way. So I think also the people don't want to play for Australia. I think.
Yeah. It like that, like basically I agree 100%. It's just an environment where you can't be yourself. You can't. I mean, Hooper took his time away from the game as well for his own mental things that he had to deal with, and it's almost like that's been an issue in the sense for Eddie Jones when he was there, or for Australian rugby for that matter. It's almost like they were like, oh well, you're gonna abandon us. Well then, cool. You don't play the World Cup then. So it's just a place where I feel like if Jake White had to go there, I'd feel sorry for the guy in the sense that would he get the backing that he wants and that he deserves, and will he get the freedom to manage the players in the sense that they will enjoy playing for Australia again rather than what looked like in the World Cup they were being forced to play.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we know how stubborn Jake can be, and if he was to take the Wallabies job, I don't think he takes it if he doesn't get assurances that he's gonna get the backing, he can play his style of rugby, he gets his coaching staff. I think he's been long in the game long enough to know exactly what he wants, uh, to in his mind know what a team needs to succeed, and he's gonna stick with that. So I don't think he signs on at all if he knows I'm not getting the full backing of Australian rugby from the start. And I just want to switch the script a bit, right? So we spoke about Eddie Jones that came in as the coach of Australia. And what was the previous coach's name again? That coached last year?
Dave Rennie, was it not?
Dave
Yeah.
Rennie. Now, was it the right decision to get rid of him after that season, knowing he had about 25 international players that was injured? And of course, they had good performances every now and again, but you have a total new squad. You are not even that long as a coach. There's no chemistry in it. Do we think Dave Rennie should have maybe been kept a bit longer and should have been given the actual opportunity to make a difference in that team?
I don't think it had anything to do with Dave Rennie, if I'm honest. I think that because Jake White showed interest, not Jake White, because what's his name?
Eddie Jones.
Imagine that. Because Eddie Jones showed interest, I think that was an easy out for them. That we want Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones is our guy. Eddie Jones took us to heights that we couldn't ever imagine. We want Eddie Jones. Don't care who's at the head seat now. He must out, and we get Eddie Jones back. And I think that adds to the bit of the toxic environment that we suspect is happening, because they wanted Dave Rennie out, Eddie Jones in at all cost.
Even like Checker for the Argentinians. For me, he's done a fantastic job for that Argentinian side. I don't even think it's his fault as to what happened in the World Cup with Argentina. I genuinely believe that the players, obviously, they met the All Blacks in the semi-final. I mean, that was always going to be a game that they were going to struggle in because that's the All Blacks in a World Cup. But that Argentinian side had so much more to offer, in my opinion. I just think that the players weren't up for it. Checker has taken them to places that I've never seen Argentina go. They've challenged over the past few years. They've beaten the All Blacks. They've beaten South Africa. They've beaten the Wallabies. And I personally would have stuck with Checker as the coach at Australia. And I think he would have done a fantastic job. But like you say, it all depends on the environment that they're in, and we don't know what environment is going on there in Australian rugby.
So the question that I have for you guys is, do we think Australia ever gets back to the heights in terms of their rugby that they used to be at, because we know they were the best team in the world for large parts of rugby. Goodness gracious, that sounded ridiculous. Okay, but they were very good at rugby. Now, do we ever think they get back to those glory days? And what type of coach do we think they need? Do they need the likes of a Jake White, someone that's a bit stubborn, or will they need something fresh, something out of the box? Not a lot of people know about him. Like take a risk and throw your money there at the Cheetahs coach.
So I was actually thinking that if they weren't so politically strict, shall we say, I would like Johan Ackerman to coach an international side. And if there's an international side I think he can take to new heights because of what he did at the Lions, I think it can be with Australia. But we do know that he's extremely religious, and he swears by it that before a game we pray, after a game we pray. And I think that Australian rugby, obviously, if they have a problem with Instagram post, they're going to have a problem with a guy like Johan Ackerman. But Harvey's can be a good option as well from the Cheetahs, but I don't think they'll back someone with zero international experience. Yeah. I think they're stubborn like that.
Yeah, I personally, I think the Aussies need a coach that is the blueprint of Rassie Erasmus, and that's the only guy, in my opinion, that would be able to change things around because of his ability to get people to stand together and believe in a project. So I don't see Australia getting back to their normal selves anytime soon. If it does happen, it's going to take a whole new structure in Australian rugby in general and as head coach, because I just think there's too much. Like I always say this the whole episode, but too much toxicity in that system, and it's going to take a guy who can really get people to stand together to really change that whole Australian rugby system around.
So we spoke about Jake's feelings about possibly going there. We spoke about the Aussies maybe taking Jake, what he could do, but the real question, the question that really matters, is how do we feel about Jake going there? Like, knowing he's done so much for our country, would we still back him? Would we want him to kind of succeed in that country?
I want Jake White to stay purely for one reason, because Jake has not yet beaten the Stormers as a Bulls coach. So that's the only reason why I need the guy to stay, so the Stormers can keep beating the Bulls. But also, I'm a little bit of a Jake White fan, always have been, always will be. So I want what's best for him. And he's a great coach. Met him a few times. I think that he'll do the Australian job justice. But I don't know. It's not as personal for me as it is for Briavania, because it's kind of his main man at the moment.
Yeah, it would be a tough one to see Jake go. And I can't switch and swap if he goes to ball of shit now. Like, I can't do that. But from what I've seen this season, is Jake White's made a very conscious effort to change the way the Bulls play. And I saw that against Saracens in the Champions Cup. And it was just the way we played against Saracens, a team that is regarded as probably the greatest English side in history, with players of the likes of like Owen Farrell, Murray Toje, Vunipola, and all of them. I just think he played fearlessly against them, and I really like that. So it would be tough to see Jake go, but like you said, Brett, what's best for him is what's best for him, and we'll always back a coach who's won the Springboks a World Cup, for goodness sake. Like, 2007 was, I was still a little lighty in grade 2, but I remember the day clear as hell, and I loved it. It was awesome.
Can I just add something on that about Jake White that actually irritates me because of what he does to players I don't like? He makes them good. Like, for example, Kriel I've never seen him as an inside center. And
I agree.
Honestly, he's one of the best inside centers in the URC currently.
Yeah,
and that
I
irritates
completely
me.
agree.
And that's what Jake White does. And that's also why I think maybe as Australian coach, he'll maybe get rid of that the mullet man fly half and maybe make him a 13 or something like that. So I don't know. But the Jake factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the thing is, as Brevan mentioned earlier, like they maybe need the likes of a Rassie Rasmus blueprint. And I think if you wanna go with Jake White, you probably get quite close because Jake has a lot of charisma. He can get you fired up. You know how he is in the press conferences. He takes no or I wouldn't say makes no excuses, but he takes no prisoners. He takes you on, and I think that's kind of what you need as a coach, a guy that can take the heat for you. Now, Eddie Jones, of course, also took some heat off the players and stuff, but he never shied away from throwing it back on his players. Now, I think Jake White, with all of his experience and stuff, he reminds me a lot of Rassie Erasmus. I think that would be a perfect signing for them if they're going for someone with charisma that could get the players united, believing in a project, someone that's won a World Cup. And of course, like I love Jake. Okay. He brings me a lot of joy every year we play the Bulls. Every year we win. It's a lot of joy. He brought me my first World Cup when I was also in grade 2, 7 years old. So the first time I saw the Rugby World Cup lifted, I saw Jake White standing there. So I'm not a big fan necessarily of South Africans going to play for other countries. I'm not a fan of South African coaches coaching different countries. Like if you coach in another country, a franchise, fine. But like, I just feel Jake shouldn't do it just because he's like this miracle man for South Africa himself. If you've won a World Cup for a country, you don't go and coach another country. That's just my point of view on it.
You know, it's funny. I was also 7 years old when South Africa won their first World Cup.
1995.
Wow.
That's why we call you the OG. But Jake White has a chance to rectify that Stormers bogey, whatever goes on in his mind, on the 23rd of December. But they will be playing on a pitch that is kind of new to both sides. So, how do you think this goes, guys? Bit of an artificial grass pitch. Jake can rectify his mistakes here. Can he beat the Stormers? What are we saying?
I actually on the artificial pitch. So because Cape Town Stadium, it's half. So to change codes quickly, think about all the teams in the world that play sevens. They all play their rugby on these artificial pitches. South Africa has never. So this is like a new thing. And we saw how it impacted the blitz box, how they like almost fell out. They fell out of their own home tournament when they played. Could this be the downfall for the Stormers? Because that pitch is, like you said, it's new to them. I'm not looking for excuses. Don't quote me on anything. I'm just saying, is this pitch actually going to benefit any team from South Africa?
Well, I don't even see it as an excuse. It's more part of the reason that we also struggle. Of course, like when the Stormers tour, we are renowned for not winning when we tour. And it's because we are jet lagged, we are tired because we travel these long distances and stuff. But it's also like if you're not used to that pitch, it is crazy. Like look at the bounce you get from that pitch. Ruan Nel had an interview, I think it was before the game against Glasgow, where he literally came out and said, listen, you feel so much faster. It's like your legs are moving faster than your brain almost registers. So it feels totally unnatural for our boys to do it. And I think that was the big thing also, not just to save money to make Cape Town Stadium half artificial, half real grass, but I think also to get our boys used to that. So when we go and travel, that element gets nullified a bit. So I don't think in the short term it benefits us at all. But I think we get used to it after this season. Next season, the boys are used to it. They maybe travel a bit better. You get a result or two when you're away. Just like small wins. That's all you need. So,
and a little side info on the artificial pitches is why it will only work in Cape Town is because of the climate. So If you had to do something like that at a Loftus or a Ellis Park, like Joburg just came out of a very severe heat wave of 36 degrees every single day, that pitch won't last. Apparently, you need to keep it wet 24/7 if it's a heat wave, something like that. So I think because of Cape Town, the awesome weather that they have, I think that's why it works, and everywhere in Europe because it's gloomy and rainy and miserable and just stays wet the whole time. So I think it will maybe on the long run benefit the Stormers to play on that pitch, but I don't know. Maybe we beat the Bulls. The Stormers beat the Bulls on said pitch.
Yeah, so it would be nice to see the Stormers play. Obviously, we know the vibe at Stellenbosch is a lot better because, it's a smaller ground. You get a lot of the youth to come out there in Stellenbosch, and obviously the vibe is great there, but obviously we know the pitch is grass. But now Cape Town Stadium obviously being half-half, it's almost like, you have to compromise. Like, we need to get used to this kind of pitch so that when we do travel without our box, because I personally believe if the Stormers had to travel with their box, I think their record would be 10 times better than what it is. But when we travel, for instance, without any box, we need to be used to playing in these types of conditions. And like Divan said, the bounce of the ball is different, the way you run is different. So getting used to it will be good for the Stormers, and it will be nice to see the Bulls and the Lions and the Sharks go and play there 2 or 3 times a year, and also just get used to playing on a pitch like that. So when we do travel overseas, we don't feel out of our depth, and we don't feel like this is something new to us.
Of course, it will help the Stormers as well because they're going to train on that pitch. Like, they'll be there every day. They'll get used to it and stuff. I kind of forgot what I wanted to ask, to be honest. I got it back. Okay, so I also think a reason for us needing to get these artificial pitches in Cape Town. Let's go back to the semi-final and the final of the URC last season, right? Do you guys remember how that pitch looked after a scrum?
Oh, terrible.
Yeah.
So this was necessary for us to do it as well. So it's a win-win situation in all aspects. I'm not saying it fixes problems, but it does fix a couple of problems.
It does fix problems because if you think of the URC final between Munster and the Stormers, that muddy, terrible, useless Cape Town pitch that we played on was what Munster plays on every single game for the last 500 years. So it was before the final. I even called it. I said this is favouring Munster to the T, and the fact that we're going half now, it won't be as muddy. It will have a bit of a real feel as well. So I think Stormers they spent money in the right areas.
100%. And if we even look at pitches, when we go and watch international games with the Springboks playing the All Blacks or the Wallabies when they play at Ellis Park, for example, the pitch also there, it tears up. Like, these pitches get torn up. And it's also because I find that when these stadiums, especially Loftus, host the Bulls one weekend and the next weekend they host Mamelodi Sundowns, a South African football team, it's 2 different sports. The grass is different in the different sports. Now, I'm not saying they change the grass week in, week out, but it has to benefit one sport. And I think what the Stormers have done is very, very clever, and I think it will benefit them massively going forward.
Okay, people, that brings us to the end of episode 13. A couple of questions for the comment section to answer. Should Jake White go to the Wallabies? Do you see him go to the Wallabies? Does he fix the problems for the Wallabies? And how bad is the Bulls? Thank you very much. See you next time. All love and support. Thank you.
Bye.